face we all recognized from a TV show or the radio, or maybe famous for what they survived. A personality, a VIP, history in the headlines. Whatever happened to, let's get the latest news. Hey, whatever happened to you?
This edition of Hey, Whatever Happened To is brought to you by these fine sponsors. Hi, I'm Doug Thompson on behalf of the Kansas Auto Racing Museum in Chapman. There's a lot to see at the 15-acre racing complex. Did you know the first NHRA event was held in Great Bend in 1955? We have the original film footage, original correspondence between Sunflower Club for Great Bend and the NHRA. We even have the first NHRA trophy. Come visit us Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5, and be sure to bring the family. Relive racing memories of the past. Experience a celebration of speed that continues in racing today at the Kansas Auto Racing Museum.
Need a rock-solid building at a rock-bottom price? Sentinel Buildings is your answer. Sentinel's all-steel buildings are custom designed to your exact needs. Engineered with the highest quality materials and workmanship, and backed by Sentinel's promise of ongoing hassle-free service and support. Whether for agriculture use, commercial, or storage, you'll live with your building for years. Get it right the first time. Contact your local Sentinel dealer or call Sentinel Building Systems today. Sentinel Buildings, rock solid.
Welcome to Hey, Whatever Happened To? In this week's edition of the show, we're going to be discussing about Emmett Kelly Sr., the world-famous clown. I'm Doug Thompson with co-host Roger Thompson. Thank you so much for watching the show. It's become quite popular, and we thank you for that. So far, we have done segments, Roger, on Vivian Vance from Cherryville, Kansas, and of course she was Ethel Mertz on the I Love Lucy show. And we did the one you did with Hugh Beaumont from Lawrence, Kansas, and he was Ward Cleaver.
Leave It to Beaver.
Yep, on the Leave It to Beaver. You had Jerry Mathers on the show, and that was fantastic. We did one on James Sharp, as we did the kind of the war series, and Jim Sharp was from White City, still is, but now he's living over in Manhattan, and that was a wonderful story. He was in the Battle of the Bulge and then became a guard at the Nuremberg trials, and man, that was an interesting story. We've had a lot of feedback about that one. And then your neighbor, Dick Seitz, who recently passed away, General Seitz. And man, that was a wonderful story.
Yes, it was. I enjoyed doing that one.
And then you did one from Elton Mumphrey here in Chapman.
Yeah.
And he was at the Battle of Iwo Jima and island hopping in those days.
In the Pacific,
yep.
Sure.
And that was World War II, of course. And then we did one on Wild Bill Hickok, and that was an interesting story. If you want to check out any of the shows that we have done so far, they're on our website. You can go to the website by going to heywhateverhappenedto.org, and you will see the picture of the celebrity on there, and then you just click on that picture, and you'll be able to watch the show. We also have bonus footage that we may not have included in the original program, would be included in that as well. And today we're working on several things, but today we're going to be working on Emmett Kelly Sr.'s story. And we're also just about to finish up on Milburn Stone, who was Doc Adams in the old Gunsmoke series. And we've done the story on Hattie McDaniel, and she was the maid in Gone with the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a wonderful story. She was out of Wichita, Milburn Stone out of Burton. And next week, or no, actually tomorrow, going to go shoot at the Eisenhower Center. We're going to do the story of Dwight Eisenhower, which is fabulous. Not only the president, but chief of staff, and was in charge of the D-Day invasion. And boy, it's amazing how many people around Kansas there are that rose to some level of national prominence.
Right. So we're going to have a busy time, busy season.
And we are. And Emmett Kelly Sr. was no exception to that. He was born in Sedan, Kansas, 1898. His father was from Ireland, worked on the railroad, and his mom ran a boarding house for the railroad. And his mom, matter of fact, put $1 away towards a correspondence school class on artwork.
Yeah.
And it took 25 weeks to save that money, or months perhaps, but finally got it, and that's what got him started in that industry.
And he worked in Kansas City in various areas. They moved to Missouri shortly after they were in Sedan, and there's quite a museum in Sedan that's set up for Emmett Kelly.
Yeah, there is, and
So-
and they are very proud of him. You're going to see the story about Emmett Kelly. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned for Hey, Whatever Happened to Emmett Kelly Sr.
Hey, whatever happened to you?
Welcome to this edition of Hey, Whatever Happened to, and this week we're taking a look at Emmett Leo Kelly Sr. Emmett Kelly was born December 9th, 1898 in Sedan, Kansas. Emmett Kelly was a world-famous circus clown, best remembered for his sad-faced, silent, weary Willie hobo clown, who was the perpetual underdog, never gave up, and is fondly remembered for his comic act of sweeping the spotlight. Emmett's father came from County Court, Ireland, when he was 21 years of age, seeking his fame and fortune in America. While in his 40s, the elder Kelly met a pretty bohemian girl, the daughter of the boarding house owners in a town in southwest Kansas. She was only 18 and her parents opposed the romance, so they eloped and came to Sedan, Kansas. Emmett and his sister Sylvia were born in Sedan. His parents worked for Missouri Pacific Railroad, where his father, Thomas Kelly, was part of the railroad crew, and his mother, Molly, ran a boarding house for the railroad. Emmett Kelly was named for the great Irish patriot, Robert Emmett. Later in school, Emmett's classmates called him Tater. He disliked the term. Sometime around 1905, his parents moved from Sedan to a farm in southern Missouri. Both parents were hard workers. Emmett grew up in hard conditions and knew what it was to work many hours. When he was a teenager, his mother painstakingly paid $1 at a time for a $25 correspondence course in cartooning, which started him on the path to fame. On Saturday nights, Emmett and his sister would go to the bandstand in the public square in Sedan to listen to concerts. Emmett loved music, but his ambition as a kid and as a young man was to be an artist. From Sedan to being a farm boy in Missouri, he went to Kansas City to make a career in cartooning. Jobs were scarce, and he turned to painting of any kind. One day he got a job painting the merry-go-round for a small carnival. The owner pressed Emmett to come along and operate one of the sideshows. From carnivals it was a small step, but not an easy one, to the circus jobs. Emmett worked as a cartoonist for a silent film company in Kansas City, Missouri. He always dreamed of joining a traveling circus. Between carnival jobs, he found work in Kansas City with an advertising company. Emmett would later say, "And there in that little plant was where my tramp character was born." He came gradually as a forlorn and melancholy little hobo who always got the short end of the stick and never lost hope and just kept on trying. Willie always seemed like the real personality to Kelly. Emmett would later say, "It may seem that all there was to Willie was a threadbare suit, a putty nose, some grease paint, a busted derby, and a pair of big flappy shoes. I know that Willie had a heart too." That heart caused Kelly a lot of agony when he had his first glimmering chance to star in a movie. The film people wanted him in his Willie personality to play a clown who murdered. Emmett needed the job, wanted the money, but Willie seemed to say no to Emmett. "Don't do this. I'm a tramp, but I'm not a bad guy, and I don't want to harm anybody. Good tramps don't harm anybody, and I do love children. Don't do it." Emmett didn't do it. The movie people relented and let him don an entirely different clown makeup for the role, and Willie has gone unhindered on his innocent way. A good tramp loves people and lives only to make them laugh and forget their troubles. It's no wonder Sedan is so proud of its connection with Emmett Kelly Sr. and Willie the Tramp. Later, Emmett joined the Howell's Greatest Circus, initially painting the circus wagons, but later became a trapeze artist. In 1922, Emmett met and married Eva Moore, another trapeze artist. Together they worked the trapeze and high wire act. In 1923, Eva became pregnant with their first son, Kelly Jr., and Kelly tried to increase his salary by working between acts as a clown. Emmett conceived the hobo clown, Weary Willie, but it was not popular until the Great Depression, which made hobos, tramps, and unemployed, scruffy men more acceptable to the audiences. By 1933, Weary Willie made his appearance and quickly grew to become an American icon. At the end of his performance, rather than take a break, Weary Willie would often wander into the other acts, steal the limelight with his silent parody of the other performers. Audiences loved him. While performing in London in 1942, he came to the attention of John Ringling North, who signed him to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. Emmett stayed with Ringling Brothers for 14 seasons. He also worked as the mascot for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1956. Emmett also landed a number of Broadway and film roles, including the role of Willie in 1952 in the Cecil B. DeMille's The Greatest Show on Earth. He also appeared in the Bantram Mills Circus. Kelly was mystery guest on the March 11, 1956 broadcast of What's My Line, and answered the panelists' questions with grunts rather than speaking yes or no. When the round was over, panelist Arlene Francis mentioned that Kelly was not allowed to speak while in makeup. Emmett also appeared in numerous television shows, including The Fat Man in 1951, Telephone Time in 1956, The Jackie Gleason Show in 1957, Playhouse 90 also in 1957, and The Bob Cosby Show in 1958. Wind Across the Everglades in 1958, The DuPont Show of the Week in 1962. Emmett also appeared on other popular television shows, including the G.E. True Theater, The Ed Sullivan Show, Captain Kangaroo, NBC Comedy Hour, I've Got a Secret, The Joey Bishop Show, and The Carol Burnett Show. Emmett Kelly was an inaugural inductee to the International Clown Hall of Fame in 1989. He was inducted to the International Circus Hall of Fame in 1994. In 1998, Kelly was inducted into the Hall of Famous Missourians, and a bronze bust depicting him is on permanent display in the rotunda of the Missouri State Capitol. Kelly's boyhood town of Houston, Missouri, renamed the city park Emmett Kelly Park in his honor and hosted an annual Emmett Kelly Clown Festival, which attracted clowns from across the region, including Kelly's grandson, Joey Kelly, who returned every year to perform as a special guest. The Emmett Kelly Festival in Houston, Missouri ended its 20-year run in May of 2008. To this day, as you drive into Sedan, Kansas, you will see the sign, Sedan, birthplace of Emmett Kelly, world-famous clown. The Emmett Kelly Museum is located near US 166 and Main Street in the center of the town. The museum contains much circus memorabilia and naturally features the unshaven, unhappy face of Willie. The Emmett Kelly Museum is located in Sedan, Chautauqua County, Kansas.
Hey, whatever happened to you?
One of the most horrifying events in the life of Emmett Kelly occurred as he was with Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. It was on a sunny and hot afternoon on July 6, 1944, when over 7,000 fans made their way to Barber Street in Hartford, Connecticut to see the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus performance. Between 167 and 169 circus fans never went home. Over 700 were injured. The others returned home with physical and emotional scars that they bore for the remainder of their lives. On July 6, 1944, a fire broke out during a matinee performance of the circus. Despite circus employee attempts to limit the blaze, it quickly spread, engulfing the big top in flames. In mid-20th century America, a typical circus traveled from town to town by train, performing under a huge canvas tent, commonly called the Big Top. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus was the largest circus in the country. Its Big Top could seat 9,000 spectators around its 3 rings. The tent's canvas had been coated with 1,800 pounds of paraffin dissolved in 6,000 U.S. gallons of gasoline, a common waterproofing method of the time. The circus had been experiencing shortages of personnel and equipment as a result of the United States' involvement in World War II. Delays and malfunctions in the ordinary smooth order of the circus had become commonplace. When the circus had arrived at Hartford, Connecticut on July 5, 1944, the trains had arrived so late that one of the 2 shows scheduled for the day had been canceled. The next day was a Thursday. The crowd at the afternoon performance was dominated by women and children. After the lions performed, the fire began as a small flame on the southwest side of the tent. Circus band leader Merle Evans is said to be the person who first spotted the flames and immediately directed the band to play Stars and Stripes Forever, the tune that traditionally signaled distress to all of the circus personnel. Ringmaster Fred Bradna urged the audience not to panic and to leave in an orderly fashion, but the power failed and he could not be heard. Bradna and the ushers unsuccessfully tried to maintain order as the panicked crowd tried to flee the big top. The cause of the fire remains unproven. Investigators at the time believed it was caused by a carelessly flicked cigarette, but others suspected an arsonist. Several years later, while being investigated on other arsonist charges, Robert Dale Seagy, who was a 14-year-old roustabout at the time, confessed to starting the blaze. He was never tried for the crime and later recanted his confession. The big top tent collapsed in about 8 minutes, according to eyewitness survivors, trapping hundreds of spectators beneath it. Because of a picture that appeared in several newspapers of sad tramp clown Emmett Kelly holding a water bucket, the event became known as the Day the Clowns Cried. Within days of the fire, charges were filed against 5 officials and employees of the Ringling Brothers. This resulted in the circus paying almost $5 million to the 600 victims and families who had filed claims against them by 1954. All circus profits from the time of the fire until then had been set aside to pay off these claims. Emmett Kelly Jr. followed in the footsteps of his famous father. Emmett Kelly was born November 13, 1923 in Dyersburg, Tennessee. For the first few years of his life, young Emmett Jr. traveled with his parents on the circus circuit, becoming a veteran of life on the road. When he became old enough, Jr. was sent to live with his grandparents for a more stable environment. He would catch up with his parents for the summer and worked at the circus. At the age of 18, Emmett Kelly Sr.'s son enlisted in the United States Navy and spent 3 years in the Pacific campaign. He chose a career as an auto mechanic and railroad switch tender after the war ended. 15 years later, Emmett Jr. answered the call of circus life and clowning when he debuted at the 1960s Circus Festival in Peru, Indiana. He was encouraged and trained by his famous father. He donned the Weary Willie costume and makeup. By 1972, Emmett Kelly Jr. fulfilled a dream and became a circus performer. Emmett Kelly Jr. presented the sweeping spotlight routine, which became a pantomime classic created by his famous father, Emmett Kelly Sr. Jr. performed in public appearances nationwide until his death in 2006 at the age of 83. When asked to describe Weary Willie, Emmett Kelly would say, "Weary Willie is very real to me. He is a man who has given up. The boat is gone and left him. The cards are stacked against him. He is content to make out with what he's got. He knows he'll go no further." However, Emmett Kelly Sr. did go further. He was recognized as the most famous clown in the world. Emmett Kelly died at the age of 80 of a heart attack on March 28, 1979, at his home in Sarasota, Florida. He's buried in the family plot at the Rest Haven Memorial Park in Lafayette, Indiana. The legacy of Emmett Kelly Sr. continued through his son Emmett Kelly Jr., who took over the Weary Willie costume and act in 1960 and kept the act going for a new generation of Emmett Kelly fans. Emmett Kelly published his autobiography, Clown, in 1954. Emmett Kelly and his third wife, Eve Gebhardt, who performed with her sisters for the Ringling Brothers, had 2 daughters, Monica, a Hollywood starlet, and Stacia, who was with the Ice Capades until her father's death. Other famous people from Chautauqua County include Lewis F. Burns, who was an American tribal historian, author, and teacher; Glenn Eldon Nelson, American jockey in the sport of thoroughbred horse racing; and Charlie Weatherby, football player and coach. He served as head coach at Utah State University, United States Naval Academy, and Louisiana Monroe.
Say, whatever happened to you?
Welcome back to Hey, Whatever Happened to Emmett Kelly. Roger, that was a fascinating segment about Emmett Kelly Sr.
And that's only the tip of the iceberg. For the rest of the iceberg, you need to know that Emmett had a son named Emmett Kelly Jr. Our generation remembers Emmett Kelly Jr. as being Weary Willie, that he took over from his dad. Jr. also served 3 years in the Navy in the Pacific during World War II and was at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. What's interesting about Jr. is he received numerous accolades during his time as Weary Willie, and he was even called to Washington twice once in 1972 to perform. He had his own circus, and again in 1973. Hence, that became the era of clowns in Washington. And we've had them ever since.
And they continued to grow in numbers.
Yes. The interesting thing about Emmett Kelly Jr. is he had a son named Paul. And Paul had an accident, worked on the railroad, had an accident, lost his leg, and decided that he was going to pick up after his father, Junior, and become Weary Willie. And so he started his own act. He named himself Emmett Kelly III. And for a few years, he became Weary Willie. But his life didn't end very well, because in about 1979, he was convicted of murdering 2 people.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and so there's a lot more behind the Emmett Kelly story than we've just covered. But if you want to go to our website, whateverhappenedto.org, you'll find out some of that information, and you can do some research on your own to cover the rest.
Yeah, and it's the website's actually heywhateverhappenedto.org.
That's why you can never find it. It's got to be hay first.
Yeah, got to be hay first, H-E-Y. Got to be hay first, and that will get you to the website, and you'll see all of the shows that we have released so far out on Eagle, and Emmett Kelly certainly one of the interesting ones. Every year they have a celebration at the city park, which they renamed for Emmett Kelly at Sedan, and I think they do the same at where the family moved to in Missouri.
Well, it could be, but Junior, they do the same thing for Junior in Tombstone, Arizona, where he lived and really liked that town.
Yeah.
So it's
they claim him as well.
Right.
Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. Hey, whatever happened to Emmett Kelly Sr.?